Is the U.S. housing market headed for a price correction, or will prices remain high while interest rates continue to climb? Using an article from The Hill written by Professor Jay Kumar, an associate professor of economics at the University of Tampa, let's take a look at this. So a hugely common question and concern right now for those looking to purchase a home in 2022 is not just the ever-increasing interest rates, but is a big housing correction coming? The U.S. home prices rose 18.8% in 2021, according to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller, the U.S. National Home Price Index. During the first 3 months of 2022, home prices continued their upward trajectory. According to the National Association of Realtors, or NAR for short, the median existing home price for all house types in March was $375,300, up from 15% from March of 2021, with the number of 326,300. So as these prices rose in each region, this marks 121 consecutive months of year-over-year increases, which is the longest running streak on record. Despite these surging home prices, there are growing concerns regarding the overall health of the United States real estate market, as the pace of sales have cooled in recent months amid the fast rising mortgage rates and continuing supply shortfalls. Recent analysis by Redfin suggests that at least some home buyers have moved to the sidelines and are no longer looking to buy. But the same analysis suggested that around 54% of homes still sold above list price. Given the outsized role that the housing sector plays in the U.S. economy, it is worth considering whether or not we are approaching an inflection point in the real estate market. Indications that the Federal Reserve has finally realized that it needs to take a front-load rate hike to curtail the surging inflationary pressures have caused the bond market to reset interest rate expectations. Consequently, the 30-year mortgage rate has recently surged past the 5% level, with average rates are up 2% since December of 2021. We've seen a lot of this with our most recent home buyers and those we pre-approved back in November or December. Unfortunately, they've got to see the continual increase in these interest rates. Now, while mortgage rates weigh on buyers' ability to bid up on home prices going forward, it's still not clear that an actual correction or sustained reduction in median sale price is likely this year. On the demand front, several favorable structural drivers are still in play. So first, millennials are reaching that sweet spot for becoming first-time home buyers. So according to a recent NAR report, a combination of a share of younger millennials, so ages 23 to 31, and older millennials from 32 to 41 rose to 43% in 2021, up from 37% in 2020. This, along with secondly, the shift of some white-collar workers from top-tier to second-tier cities has generated substantial and fresh ongoing demand for housing in urban and suburban regions experiencing rapid population growth. Fortune magazine's Sean Tully stated that the home office economy has unshackled families to leave these high-cost metro areas on the coast and flock to more super affordable Sunbelt cities, which is greatly boosting those markets. A third factor has to do with the price to rent ratios. So we all know rent prices are going higher. And so while sharply surging price to rent ratios in fast-growing metros like Boise, Phoenix, and Austin might be a cause for concern, the stunning increase in rents across the nation in recent months may act as a push factor for potential home buyers. Essentially, expectations of continuing rapid increases in rent may force some to consider becoming homeowners maybe sooner than they thought, with more of a fixed and predictable monthly payment. The fact that the real estate market may act as a hedge against inflation is an additional bonus towards that. And finally, the emergence of deep-pocketed corporate buyers and investors has been a factor in sustaining demand, especially in Sunbelt cities. Private investors are competing with and frequently outbidding first-time home buyers who are using, the more traditional means of home purchasing. And we've seen this as a common front here, even in Minneapolis where I'm at. These Zillow, these Redfin, and these private buyers are really buying up a lot of this supply, which then obviously increases the demand. So then on the supply front, housing inventories continue to remain low. The fact that new housing construction, especially that of single-family homes, was muted for a decade after the 07-08 crash has left the U.S. with a substantial supply shortfall. High costs for materials and supply bottlenecks have further hampered home builders from ratcheting up the new construction and the delayed arrival of these new units onto the market, thus, contributing to this whole supply and demand issue. On top of all of this, many existing homeowners are unwilling to put their own homes on the market. Many who, locked these historically low mortgage rates in recent years understandably are unwilling to take the risk of entering a red-hot housing market where they may not only have to pay a higher price for a new home, but also risk a potentially much higher mortgage rate and in turn a much higher mortgage payment. So insufficient and new existing home inventory will likely keep prices elevated in the near term. So while a housing market correction in 2022 is unlikely, there are several serious headwinds facing the real estate sector. Increasing problems associated with housing affordability poses a growing threat. In many parts of the country, especially in metro regions that have experienced a substantial rise in both rent and home prices, the proportion of monthly budgets that households devote to shelter-related expenses has surged well past ideal and sustainable levels. Typically, we want to see spending around 30% of a monthly income on rent or a mortgage with HOA payments is more considered ideal. Now, I've seen many of my clients in more recent time being at 40% plus range. So we're definitely starting to hit some factors where people are kind of pushing their limits a little bit. At present, the very tight labor markets and strong household balance sheets offer sufficient ballast to sustainable real estate demand despite elevated home prices. And as the Federal Reserve blatantly turns hawkish and implements aggressive rate hikes to fight this inflation, there's definite risk of an economic hard landing in 2023. Once higher interest rates cool the economy and sufficiently enough to cause unemployment rates to rise, many more households will encounter other difficulties trying to meet their housing-related expenses. Now, a recent study by the Dallas Fed offered a following stark warning, and they stated that our evidence points to abnormal U.S. housing market behavior for the first time since the boom of the early 2000s. Reasons for concern are clear in certain economic indicators, the price-to-rent ratio, in particular, the price-to-income ratio, which show signs that in 2021, the house prices appear to be increasing out of step with fundamentals. The one mitigating factor that the financial sector has not lowered borrowing standards this time around compared to 08-07 timeframe, and that then potentially reduces the risk of a broader shock to the real economy when the housing market eventually cools.